What if I told you that a building doesn't actually need a dead body to be haunted?
Which is quite a claim.
Right. I mean, what if the most terrifying ghosts out there aren't trapped souls or,
Wow.
floating figures in bedsheets, but just the invisible, stubborn residue of human rules, fear, and ambition?
Yeah, it completely changes the definition.
It really does. So welcome to your custom deep dive. Today, we are taking everything you thought you knew about the paranormal and turning it entirely upside down. We're looking at Todd Fischer's really fascinating book, Witness to What Was, Volume 2.
It's a brilliant text.
It is. And our mission today is to completely redefine the architecture of a haunting. Because we aren't talking about Hollywood spirits today. We're talking about what happens to a physical space when the humans leave, but the intent behind that space refuses to die.
Right. And it forces a profound reevaluation of our environment because, we like to think of buildings and structures as just passive containers.
Like empty boxes.
Exactly. You build a wall, you use the room, you knock it down. But places actually absorb the specific frequency of our routines. They absorb our strict procedures and our extreme emotions.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the central question Fischer poses here is really about what happens when human function is abruptly withdrawn from a space, right? But the structural environment itself is still like stubbornly running its programming.
Yes.
And there's a perfect example from the text for this, the Collingwood Art Center in Toledo, Ohio.
Yes.
Before it was an art center, it was a massive, incredibly strict Catholic school.
Right.
And what is so unsettling about the accounts from this building is that it doesn't feel abandoned at all. Visitors actually say it feels paused.
Pause. That's such a specific word.
Right. Like you hear footsteps in the halls, but they aren't the echoes of someone lost. They sound purposeful.
Like someone doing rounds.
Exactly. There's even a statue of the Virgin Mary in one of the stairwells that people report. It doesn't feel like a piece of decorative art. It feels assigned, like it is actively evaluating your behavior as you walk past.
Wow.
I know. It's haunted by institutional rules that just forgot to expire.
And the distinction Fischer draws here is between procedural memory and emotional memory.
Procedural memory.
Right, because when you think of a haunted house, you usually assume a crime of passion or maybe a sudden tragedy.
Sure, like a murder mystery.
Exactly. But Collingwood was designed down to the very masonry to shape behavior, command obedience, and instill order. It literally still expects attendance.
That's so creepy.
It is. But contrast that rigid procedural atmosphere with the Gerber House, which actually sits right on the same property.
Oh, yeah, because the Gerber House wasn't a school. It was a domestic home for the clergy and the administrators.
Right.
And the atmosphere over there is just completely different. The ceilings are lower, the rooms are intimate, and the feeling visitors describe isn't one of being evaluated or judged at all.
No, it's much heavier.
Yeah, it's described as a feeling of heavy, silent endurance. Like it feels compressed with decades of repressed emotion.
Which makes perfect sense psychologically.
I mean, if Collingwood is the machine that enforced the rules, the Gerber House was where the people enforcing those rules had to go sit in silence with the psychological weight of their own discipline.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like walking into a massive server room, where Collingwood is the computer stubbornly running an outdated, demanding operating system.
Yeah.
And the Gerber House is the overheating battery just holding onto the massive emotional cost of running that system.
That analogy gets right to the core of it. They form a closed-loop system of control and consequence.
Right.
And spaces that process extreme, concentrated human experiences, they absorb that density in ways that are really hard to articulate.
Like hospitals, right?
Exactly. Take the North Hollywood Medical Center. This was a fully operational hospital. Every single day, within those walls, people experience the absolute zenith of human emotion.
Childbirth, trauma, death.
Yes. Desperate surgeries, all of it. Then the hospital closes, and inexplicably, it is repurposed as the comedy set for the television show Scrubs.
Okay, I have to push back on that because that detail just baffled me.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, you have a space completely saturated with literal life and death trauma. How does moving in a bunch of actors, setting up bright studio lights, and rehearsing punchlines for a sitcom, not just completely erase or sanitize the bad vibes.
I see what you mean.
Like it seems like it would break the tension of the haunting entirely.
Well, the thing is, you cannot sanitize decades of existential panic with a laugh track.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The actors and crew on that set frequently reported feeling incredibly uneasy between takes. The comedy doesn't erase the gravity of the space, it just awkwardly layers over it.
Oh, wow.
It creates cognitive dissonance. The building was designed to save lives, and suddenly people are running around pretending to be doctors for laughs. The architecture itself is holding the serious intent, while the temporary occupants are mocking it. That friction is its own kind of haunting.
So you're saying it's haunted by the sheer density of overlapping conflicting extremes?
Precisely.
Which perfectly describes the Queen Mary.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, you look at this vessel, and it is a masterpiece of luxury ocean travel. Glamour, champagne, high society.
The best of the best.
Right. But then World War II breaks out.
Right.
They strip out all the luxury, paint the whole thing gray, and in comes a troop ship known as the Gray Ghost.
Carrying thousands of terrified soldiers into war zones.
Exactly. It outran U-boats. And then in 1942, this horrific tragedy happens. It accidentally rammed a British cruiser, the HMS Kaho'olawe, slicing it clean in half.
Just a devastating event.
Hundreds of men drowned. And because of strict wartime orders to keep moving to avoid submarines, the Queen Mary couldn't even stop to rescue them.
Which is unimaginably heavy. And that's why the Queen Mary isn't haunted by one specific individual. It is haunted by repetition and density.
Density of emotion, you mean?
Yes, the sheer volume of extreme human experiences packed into one steel hull creates a kind of atmospheric pressure. You have the zenith of privilege and relaxation overlapping with the absolute terror of war, the guilt of survival and mass tragedy.
All in one physical place.
Exactly. A physical space can only absorb so much human intensity before it starts radiating it back out.
That makes a lot of sense. So if hospitals, schools, and troop ships hold on to their heavy, serious intent, what happens to spaces that were engineered strictly for optimism?
Oh, that's a really interesting shift.
Like spaces built for play or for global unity when nature or a sudden disaster interrupts them.
Right.
Think about Six Flags New Orleans. This was a massive theme park built entirely for family fun, predictability, and joy. Then Hurricane Katrina hits in 2005.
And it just ends.
The park is destroyed and completely abandoned. And if you look at photos of it now, the dissonance is physically jarring. You have these giant, peeling, smiling cartoon faces clashing with real-world alligators that have literally moved into the flooded ride basins.
It's such a stark image. The haunting of Six Flags New Orleans isn't really about fear. It's about interrupted anticipation.
Interrupted anticipation.
Yes, because a theme park is a promise of joy. When you walk through those decaying turnstiles now, the environment is still projecting that promise, but the reality of uncontrolled disaster has swallowed it.
You feel the ghost of a party that never happened.
Exactly. And we see a similar, though honestly more complicated dynamic with abandoned Olympic sites. Take Sarajevo. They hosted the 1984 Winter Olympics. It was a beautiful moment of rare global unity right in the middle of the Cold War.
But then, less than 10 years later, the Bosnian War broke out.
Yeah.
And the destruction there was so violently intentional. You have these concrete metal podiums marred by bullet holes. You have these massive figure skating rinks destroyed because military tanks literally parked on them.
Right.
It's a space of unity weaponized into a space of war. But then you contrast Sarajevo with the 2004 Athens Olympic venues.
Which is a very different kind of decay.
Because there was no war in Athens. There was just time and neglect.
Yeah.
You have these massive multi-million-dollar stadiums sitting completely empty beneath the sun. The concrete is cracking. Weeds are choking the pathways. It is a slow, quiet decay.
Yeah, Sarajevo is the haunting of shattered innocence, whereas Athens is the haunting of unsustainability.
That's a huge difference.
It is. Both represent the fading of an era's confidence, though. The structures were built to project a permanent global ideal, but the physical world just couldn't maintain the illusion.
We see this fading confidence on a cultural level, too, right? Like, look at Studio 54 in New York.
The absolute cathedral of 1980s excess.
Exactly the term for it. It was a temple to escapism. And today, the space operates as a legitimate theater. Neil Patrick Harris even starred in Cabaret there. The stage is perfectly respectable now.
On the surface, yes.
Right, but behind the scenes, in the secret corridors and the hidden rooms where they literally used to stash garbage bags full of cash on the walls, the architecture remembers the frenzy.
The illicit whispers, the paranoia.
Yes, And the sheer adrenaline of that secrecy still lingers in the blueprint of the building.
It's like the energy of American optimism just quietly fading away.
Which reminds me of the deep dive the book does into Route 66, the Mother Road.
Right, built entirely on the promise of the journey, the freedom of the automobile.
Then the interstate highway system comes along and bypasses it entirely. It just leaves behind these stranded gas stations and neon-lit motels in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't destroyed by a storm or a war. Progress just left it behind.
Just obsolete.
Or, on the flip side of that, you have Bob Lee's dome homes in Cape Romano, Florida. Have you seen pictures of these?
Oh, I have. They are wild.
They look like a concrete lunar base dropped on a beach in the 80s. They were specifically engineered to be futuristic and withstand the absolute most violent hurricanes Florida could throw at them.
And they actually did.
They did. But they couldn't withstand the slow, indifferent rise of the ocean. The sea level just crept up and gracefully swallowed them.
Wow.
I mean, Six Flags feels like someone pulled the plug on a party. But looking at the dome homes slowly marching into the sea, I really wonder if nature's indifferent glacial erasure is actually scarier than a sudden disaster.
Well, I mean, nature does not mourn, it only repurposes. Water doesn't care about our brilliant architectural engineering, it only obeys gravity.
Right.
When we look at those sinking domes or the crumbling Olympic stadiums, we aren't sensing the spirits of the dead. We're sensing the ghost of our own arrogance.
Our own arrogance, wow.
Yeah, we build these massive monuments, whether for theme parks, global games, or futuristic living, assuming we will always be there to maintain them. The haunting is the realization of our own impermanence.
But sometimes we don't even let nature do the erasing. Sometimes humanity actively, terrifyingly erases its own footprints out of paranoia or militarism.
Which is a whole different level.
Let's look at Times Beach, Missouri. An entire American town completely wiped off the map by the government because the dirt roads were accidentally sprayed with toxic dioxin. They bought the town, evacuated everyone, and scrubbed it clean.
Just erased it.
Or look at Kaho'olawe. It's a profoundly sacred Hawaiian island used for cultural ceremony and navigation. And the military just commandeered it as a live firebombing range for decades.
Those are hauntings of forced absence. Yes. When the military shatters coral reefs and leaves unexploded ordnance across a sacred landscape, they aren't just destroying physical terrain, they are deliberately creating a void where a culture used to thrive.
Right.
Kaho'olawe is an ecological wound, certainly, but more than that, it is an erasure driven by the pursuit of dominance.
And nothing embodies that terrifying pursuit of dominance quite like the dawn of the atomic age.
Absolutely.
The book takes us to the Trinity site in New Mexico, 1945. The exact spot where the first atomic bomb was detonated. The heat was so intense, it literally melted the desert sand into a radioactive green glass they called trinitite.
Just unimaginable power.
But the detail that really sticks with me is about Chet Lytle, the man who invented the detonator. He looked at the flash, and it was so bright it literally burned a permanent blind spot into his retina.
Wow.
Every single time he closed his eyes, for the rest of his life he saw the explosion. His own body became a haunted space.
That is deeply chilling.
And then, weeks later, the unimaginable devastation of Hiroshima. The text points out that today, modern nuclear weapons are so powerful they could vaporize all 5 boroughs of New York City in an instant. It makes you realize that we have created a mechanism that could turn the entire Earth into a ghost.
I mean, that is the ultimate existential haunting, the realization that humanity literally engineered the machinery for its own extinction.
Yeah.
And that specific paranoia didn't stay contained in the military. It bled into everyday civilian life through nuclear power.
Right, like 3 Mile Island.
Exactly. 3 Mile Island introduced this lingering national dread of invisible radiation, a threat you can't see, you can't smell, you can't fight. And that fear manifested physically at places like Marble Hill in Indiana.
Marble Hill is such a fascinating example because it's essentially a billion-dollar ghost.
Yes, it is.
It was a massive, partially built nuclear power plant. 50-foot fans, hollow arteries of cooling pipes. But it never generated a single watt of power.
Public fear over nuclear energy mounted, protests stopped the construction, and when investigators finally looked closely at the concrete containment buildings, they found them honeycombed.
Honeycombed?
Full of structural air pockets. If they had actually turned that plant on, it almost certainly would have melted down.
Oh, wow.
So it is a monument to a future we desperately wanted, but were fundamentally incapable of controlling safely.
And that same Cold War paranoia generated entire mythologies. Like, look at the USS Eldridge. That's the ship allegedly involved in the Philadelphia experiment, where the government supposedly tried to make a ship invisible or teleport it.
Right, a classic sci-fi legend.
Exactly. But regardless of whether the rumors are true, the physical ship was later found literally rotting in a salvage yard in Greece. It is haunted by the public's absolute certainty that the government is hiding terrifying capabilities.
Which perfectly explains the UFO phenomenon of that same era.
Oh, totally. You have Roswell's Hangar 84, where everyone believes the government hid crashed saucers.
Or the 1965 Texburg incident in Pennsylvania. For decades, the entire town believed an acorn-shaped alien spacecraft crashed in their woods and the military swooped in to take it.
Right.
But declassified documents suggest something way more terrestrial and honestly way more disturbing. The object was likely an inert nuclear re-entry vehicle dropped by either the US or the Soviets.
Wait, so not aliens at all?
No, and the context of location is everything here. Kecksburg is located dangerously close to Raven Rock, which is the underground bunker designed to serve as the Pentagon in the event of a nuclear war.
Oh my goodness.
So if we analyze the strategic reality, we aren't looking at extraterrestrials bumbling into a Pennsylvania forest. We are looking at psychological warfare.
It was a terrifying game of global poker. The superpowers were dropping inert nukes near each other's most secretive bunkers just to send a message.
Right.
Like, hey, we know exactly where you're hiding.
Exactly.
They were using civilian towns as poker chips. The townsfolk thought they were haunted by aliens. But really, they were haunted by the realization that their own governments viewed them as acceptable collateral damage.
The danger wasn't from the stars at all. It was from our own leadership. In these spaces, we are haunted by potential, the ghosts of futures we feared, and the chilling reality of what systems of power will execute in absolute secrecy.
Which is terrifying.
It is. But if we shift the focus away from global superpowers, the text takes us into an even more visceral territory. The hauntings generated by localized chaos, by physical objects acting as vessels for trauma, and by the terrifying power of human belief.
Okay, let's talk about the trauma that scars a whole city. The book explores the 1994 Northridge earthquake in Los Angeles, which violently destroyed places like Gazzari's nightclub on the Sunset Strip.
Right.
And it pairs that with the 1992 LA riots, which were a cultural eruption echoing the Watts riots of 1965.
See, when a city experiences sudden, massive devastation, whether the earth violently shakes them or a community erupts over decades of systemic injustice, it leaves a spectral scar across the entire civic nervous system.
The civic nervous system.
Yeah. The physical rubble gets cleared away, the buildings are rebuilt, but the memory of that collective panic hangs in the air. The city is caught in a psychological loop between survival and ruin.
And it's not just sprawling cities that capture this.
Yeah.
Physical contained objects can absorb and hold that trauma too.
Oh, absolutely.
The text details the Carrollton bus, which is currently stored in a silent underground armory. 27 people, mostly teenagers, died in that bus when a drunk driver hit them head-on, causing it to burst into flames.
Just heartbreaking.
It really is. Today, the bus is just a shell of charred metal, but visitors describe it as radiating the echo of that panic.
Right.
Or take the Louisville murder house. It's a modest shotgun home where a horrific murder-suicide occurred in the 1950s. Decades later, a new tenant moves in. She has absolutely no idea about the history of the house.
Completely blank slate.
Yes, yet she becomes overwhelmed by such a deep, suffocating despair that she attempts suicide in the exact same bathroom where the original father took his life.
Wow. And this brings us to a controversial but deeply fascinating concept in the study of hauntings. The text suggests that objects and spaces can act almost like batteries.
Batteries?
Yes. When a traumatic event occurs, the sheer kinetic and emotional energy of that moment doesn't just vanish. It actually charges the environment. The material world absorbs the frequency of the trauma.
Though it's stored.
Exactly. And we see this battery concept vividly illustrated with the cursed Gresh guitar of Eddie Cochran.
Okay, the history of this guitar is unbelievable. The curse starts at the factory, where a worker was literally crushed to death during its manufacturing process. Just grim from day one. Right. Then, the rock and roll pioneer Eddie Cochran buys it, and he dies in a violent car crash while clutching it.
Unbelievable.
And then, the police officer who saves the guitar from the wreckage, Dave D., is so affected by it that he quits the police force, becomes a musician, and writes a song that Quentin Tarantino later features in Death Proof, which is a movie entirely about vehicular manslaughter.
The layers to that are just insane.
Right. And before the guitar finally vanishes into a private collection, It passes through the hands of Mark Bolan, the frontman of T-Rex.
Okay.
And how does Mark Bolan die? In a tragic car crash?
It is a chilling lineage. The object becomes a conductor for tragedy. The author actually ties this dynamic directly into the phenomenon of the 27 Club.
Like Janis Joplin.
Yes, artists like Janis Joplin dying at the Landmark Hotel, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, these were disruptive, generational voices who fundamentally altered the frequency of global culture.
When they were silenced so abruptly at age 27, they didn't just disappear. The author describes it as leaving behind a feedback loop.
Oh, like audio feedback.
Exactly. Think of a microphone placed too close to a speaker. The sound loops and builds into a deafening screech. Their sudden absence left a sustained note of cultural grief that permanently altered the spaces they left behind.
A sustained note of absence. That perfectly articulates the feeling.
It really does.
But I think the most unsettling hauntings explored in this deep dive don't come from accidents or chaos. They come from the deliberate, lethal danger of absolute belief.
Yes.
The book visits 110 or 50 Cielo Drive, the house where Charles Manson's followers committed the horrific helter-skelter murders.
Yes.
Years later, Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails actually rents the house to set up a recording studio. He records the album The Downward Spiral there. But eventually, the oppressive dark energy of the space gets to be too much for him.
I can imagine. When he finally moves out, he physically unhinges the front door and takes it with him, installing it at his new studio in New Orleans.
Manson is such a terrifying figure because he didn't commit those murders with his own hands. He weaponized certainty.
Yeah.
He poured absolute, unquestioning belief into his followers, and they became the weapons. And we see this exact same phenomenon of weaponized belief with the Heaven's Gate cult in Rancho Santa Fe.
Oh, the Heaven's Gate cult. 39 people, all wearing identical black outfits and Nike Decade sneakers, committed mass suicide.
But it wasn't done out of chaos or fear or panic.
No.
It was executed with a calm, terrifying certainty that they were simply shedding their physical vehicles to board a spaceship trailing a comet.
In both the Cielo Drive and Heaven's Gate cases, developers eventually bought the properties, completely demolished the houses, and literally petitioned the city to change the street numbers. They tried to legally and physically scrub the history from the map.
It never really works, though.
No, which really reminds me of a poignant moment in the book when the author visits the memorial at Columbine High School. He talks about walking the grounds and realizing how incredibly thin the line is between adolescent rage and reason.
Right.
He reflects on his own youth, making a conscious choice to channel his teenage pain into leadership rather than violence. And while he is sitting there, absorbing the heavy history of the memorial, a Steller's jaybird just quietly follows him from tree to tree.
Wow.
It's this profound, quiet moment of nature bearing witness to human grief. But it makes me wonder, applying that to Cielo Drive or Heaven's Gate, can a physical address truly be cleansed just by bulldozing the drywall and changing the street numbers on a mailbox? Or does the land itself remember the intent?
The land remembers, because belief is an organizing principle of reality.
Okay, wait, explain that.
Well, when an earthquake destroys a building, it leaves physical rubble that we can sweep away. But when a group of human beings saturate a space with absolute, unwavering, lethal belief, they alter the structure of that reality. Marshall Applewhite and Charles Manson proved that ideas, when followed with unquestioning devotion, are infinitely more dangerous than physical weapons.
Yeah.
You can tear down the walls, you can plant new grass, you can change the numbers on the street sign, but you cannot unthink a belief once it has proven it can kill. The residue that lingers there isn't a ghost of a victim. It is the terrifying realization of what the human mind is capable of executing.
So bringing this all together for you listening,
Yeah.
this deep dive fundamentally changes how we need to walk through the world. Hauntings aren't a failure of the past to move on.
No, not at all.
They are a direct message from the past, broadcasting on a loop.
Yeah.
And we aren't just passive observers walking through these spaces. We are active participants.
Exactly.
Our routines, our massive concrete structures, our silenced voices, and our absolute unyielding beliefs are the very things that leave an echo. We're all constantly witnesses to what was.
The insight to carry forward is that the most dangerous ghosts are not the ones we fear in the dark. The most dangerous ghosts are the histories we refuse to look at in the light.
That is perfectly said. Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over today. Throughout this entire journey, we have talked about physical spaces, brick schools, steel ocean liners, concrete domes, and asphalt highways absorbing our routines, our fears, and our joys.
Very physical places.
Right. But what is going to happen to our digital architecture? As we live more and more of our lives online, when future generations stumble upon our abandoned server farms or dead websites and our completely obsolete social platforms, will those empty, invisible digital spaces carry the same heavy, ghostly residue of our collective human intent? Because if a house can hold a memory and a guitar can carry a curse, maybe the ghost isn't in the bedsheet at all. Maybe the ghost is just the shape of what we left behind.